In this 1902 portrait of a mother and daughter, their tightly held hands hide a grim secret. Marcus Webb had spent nearly 20 years restoring old photographs in his French Quarter studio. Still, he had never encountered anything like the portrait that came to his desk on a humid September morning in 2024. The picture was found hidden inside the walls of a house being demolished in the Garden District, tucked behind layers of old wallpaper and kept in surprisingly good condition by the dry gap between the plaster and the outer brick. The image showed a mother and daughter in a classic formal studio pose from the early 1900s. The mother seemed to be in her late 30s, with dark hair pulled back very tightly, her face carrying an expression Marcus found hard to understand. Not completely calm, not openly worried, but somewhere in the middle. The daughter looked about 16 or 17, her features very close to her mother's, sharing the same dark eyes and firm jaw. What grabbed Marcus's attention at once was the way their hands were placed. They sat next to each other on an ornate settee, hands clasped tightly between them, with a strength that felt out of place for that kind of formal portrait. In Victorian and Edwardian photographs, people usually positioned their hands carefully to show elegance and good breeding, relaxed, graceful poses that suggested refinement. But these hands gripped each other hard, almost in desperation. Their fingers were locked together, casting shadows that made it tough to see where one hand ended and the other started. Marcus prepared his high-resolution scanner and began the careful work of turning the photograph into a digital file. As the picture came up on his screen section by section, he started the basic cleanup, taking out dust specks, fixing fading from age, and adjusting the sepia color to show the true black and white tones hidden under years of aging. He was cleaning the part with their joined hands when something made him stop. Small dark spots showed up between their fingers, odd, uneven marks that did not match the usual aging look found on the rest of the photo. Marcus zoomed in, his heartbeat picking up a little. The spots were grouped in exact places, along the sides of the knuckles, between the fingers, and seemingly under the fingernails. The pattern was too regular to be chance damage or normal age marks. Having restored thousands of old photos, Marcus had built a strong sense for when something belonged to the original image, instead of later harm. He leaned back and stared at the screen, a cold sensation spreading in his stomach. He needed someone else's view, ideally a person with forensic skills. Dr. Rachel Foster had spent 12 years as a forensic analyst with the New Orleans Police Department, before retiring and starting her own business, focused on analyzing old documents. When Marcus phoned her about the photograph, she said she would come to his studio that afternoon. Rachel stood at Marcus's desk, carefully studying the improved images on his two screens, with sharp attention. She had brought her portable forensic camera equipment, a special system that could pick up hidden details using different types of light filters. "May I?" she asked, nodding toward the original photo, which Marcus had protected in an archival sleeve. "Of course," he answered, watching as Rachel lifted the photograph with gloved hands and set it under her special lights. She spent the next 30 minutes taking pictures of the clasped hands area, with various light types, ultraviolet, infrared, and several filtered kinds that could show materials and substances normal light could not reveal. Marcus watched the new images appear on Rachel's laptop, each one showing slightly different information. At last, Rachel leaned back and took off her magnifying glasses. Her face looked serious. "Marcus, what you noticed is not aging, damage, or normal wear. Those dark spots match organic material, specifically dried blood that was on their skin when the photo was made." Marcus felt his stomach knot. "You're sure? As sure as possible without tests that would harm this old photograph. But look here." She opened one of the infrared pictures on her screen. "See how the marks follow clear patterns along the nail edges, between the fingers, and in the knuckle creases. These are the exact spots where blood gathers on hands after rough contact, and the exact places hard to clean fully without heavy scrubbing. Whoever these women were, they had blood on their hands when they sat for this portrait, and they tried to wash it away, but could not get it all off." Marcus stared at the picture, thoughts rushing through his head. Could it be their own blood? Perhaps they got hurt. Rachel enlarged another area. "Look at the amount and how it is spread. If they had been injured enough to leave this much blood, there would be other clues. Bandages, swelling, open cuts. None of that is here. This looks like blood transferred from something else that was bleeding. How long before the photo session did the blood get there? Marcus asked. Rachel thought for a moment. Judging by how well it stuck to the skin and the way the stains look, I'd say within a few hours. Blood left on hands for days would appear different, more dry and flaky, with a changed color from aging. This was still fairly fresh when they posed. Marcus turned back to the faces of the mother and daughter. Their looks now carried a different meaning. The strain he had noticed was not simply old-style posing. It was something far more serious. Marcus realized he had to learn who these women were before he could make sense of the blood on their hands. He began with the clear clue, the photographer's stamp pressed faintly in the lower right corner of the photo, made more visible by his restoration work. Dearu Studio, New Orleans, 1902. He spent long hours at the New Orleans Public Library, searching digitized city directories and census records from around 1900. The Dearu Studio was a mid-range photography shop in the French Quarter from 1895 to 1910, serving middle-class families who could pay for good portraits, but not the high prices of elite studios. The library's special collections held some of the studio's old records, appointment logs, customer lists, and receipt copies. Marcus checked the 1902 entries, looking for sittings that might fit this photograph. Portrait sessions back then were usually booked far ahead and recorded carefully because they cost money and required preparation. In the October 1902 ledger, he found an entry that made his hands shake. October 15th, 3 p.m., Mrs. Helena Blanchard and daughter, Miss Caroline Blanchard. Portrait sitting, full payment received. The entry listed an address on Dauphine Street. Marcus checked the names against the 1900 census. Helena Blanchard, age 37, was married to Thomas Blanchard, age 45, a cotton merchant. They had one daughter, Caroline, listed as 14 in 1900, which would make her about 16 in 1902, matching the girl in the photo. But in the 1910 census, only two names appeared: Helena Blanchard, age 47, widow, and Caroline Blanchard, age 24, unmarried. Thomas was gone. Helena's job had changed from keeping house to boarding housekeeper, showing a big drop in the family's money. A cold feeling ran through Marcus. He searched New Orleans newspaper archives for October 1902, looking closely at days right before and after October 15th, the portrait date. On October 16th, 1902, he found what made everything clear and frightening. The Times-Picayune headline read, "Cotton Merchant Missing. Family reports Thomas Blanchard failed to return home." The short article said, Mr. Thomas Blanchard, a known cotton merchant, was reported missing by his wife after not coming home the night before. Business friends said he left his office at his normal time around 6 p.m. on October 14th, and no one had seen him after that. Marcus read the next day's papers with growing unease. October 18th, police continue search for missing merchant. October 22nd, no sign of Thomas Blanchard. November 3rd, missing merchant case grows cold. Police say few leads, then silence. The story vanished from the newspapers, apparently unsolved. Marcus reached out to Dr. Jennifer Martinez, a historian at Tulane University who studied women's lives and domestic conditions in early 1900s New Orleans. When he told her what he had discovered, she came to his studio at once. Jennifer looked at the photograph and the papers Marcus had collected, her face becoming more concerned. "You need to know what life was like for women in 1902 New Orleans," she said. Married women had almost no legal rights. A husband controlled his wife completely, her property, any money she earned, and their children. Divorce was very hard to get and carried heavy social shame, often leaving women completely alone. She opened her laptop and showed Marcus her research. "I studied domestic violence in that time for my book. What we call abuse today, physical beatings, sexual assault in marriage, financial control, was legally allowed for husbands. Police seldom got involved in home matters, and courts almost never helped women who spoke up against their husbands." Marcus started. "She had almost no escape," Jennifer said. "She might try to leave, but where could she go? She usually had no money of her own, no legal right to take the children, and no family ready to take her in against the husband's will. Society believed a wife must obey her husband as a sacred rule. Women who resisted were seen as bad, crazy, or both. Jennifer opened another file. Look at this. Court records from Orleans Parish, 1900 to 1905. Cases of women charged with killing their husbands. Marcus read the summaries. 7 cases in 5 years. In each one, the woman said she had been abused, and in each one she was found guilty even with proof of violence against her. Sentences went from 10 years to hanging. Courts did not accept self-defense for women in marriage. Jennifer said, the main legal idea was that a wife could not fight back against her husband's power, even when that power meant violence. Women who defended themselves were not seen as protecting their lives. They were seen as breaking the natural order of society. Marcus looked again at the photograph. Helena and Caroline Blanchard looked back, hands joined, blood concealed in the shadows between their fingers. What happened to the Blanchard family after Thomas vanished? Marcus asked. Jennifer found more records. Helena reported him missing, helped the police fully, and seemed like a sad, anxious wife. When he was never found, she asked the court to declare him dead after 7 years, the normal wait time. In 1909, she got it, allowing her to handle his property and business. And she started running a boarding house, Marcus noted. Yes, she sold the cotton business and their Dauphine Street house, bought a smaller place, and ran a boarding house for almost 20 years. Marcus wanted more details about Thomas Blanchard, what kind of person he was, and what might have pushed his wife and daughter to such an act, if that was what happened. He looked at Thomas's business papers in the library's commercial collection. Thomas ran a cotton brokerage connecting Louisiana growers to northern textile mills. His letters showed a sharp, sometimes harsh businessman who kept ties with wealthy New Orleans families. But other letters gave hints about his private side. A 1898 letter from a Mobile colleague said, "Glad your daughter is better from her illness. I was surprised you mentioned family problems in a business letter. Some things are better kept private among gentlemen." What illness? Marcus wondered. Caroline would have been around 12 then. Another 1900 letter said, "My sympathies to your wife on the unfortunate matter. I hope it is settled and peace has returned at home." What matter? What settlement? The careful words pointed to something embarrassing not meant for open talk, even privately. Marcus searched newspapers more thoroughly for earlier Blanchard family mentions. He found society notes about Helena at charity events and Caroline at a private girls' school, signs of a proper family. Then he found something chilling. A short Times-Picayune item from July 1898. Daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Blanchard treated at Charity Hospital yesterday for injuries from a fall downstairs at home. She is expected to recover. Family asks for privacy in this hard time, a frequent excuse for domestic violence injuries back then. If it was truly a fall, why ask for privacy? Why would a business friend call it an illness odd to mention? Hospital records from that time were few and hard to find, but he located one more note. From September 1901, Mrs. Helena Blanchard seen by her doctor at home yesterday after an accident. Dr. Maurice Gry treated her. She is resting well. Another accident. Another quiet hint of something hidden. The real discovery came unexpectedly. While checking Caroline's later years, Marcus learned she never married and died in 1954 at 68. Her obituary called her a retired teacher who taught at a girls' school for over 40 years. It said she left her papers to the archives at Newcomb College, Tulane's women's college. Marcus contacted the archives, explained his work, and got permission to see the Caroline Blanchard papers. The collection was small, teaching items, letters, and 3 journals from different times. The first journal, 1899-1903, had what he needed. In the quiet archives room, hands slightly shaking, he opened the leather book and read Caroline's young handwriting. Early pages held normal teenage thoughts, school worries, friends, social fears. But deeper into 1901 and 1902, a darker story appeared. March 1902, father came home drunk again. I heard mother crying in their room. Then something broke. This morning she had a bruise on her face and told the maid she walked into a door. Why does she cover for him? Why make excuses? I'm 16 now, not a child. I know what goes on here. May 1902. Father gripped my arm so hard it bruised. I disagreed with him at dinner about politics. He said I was getting hard to control and too outspoken. Mother stayed silent, staring at her plate. Sometimes her silence hurts more than his anger. August 1902. Found Mother in the kitchen with blood on her lip this morning. She said she'd bit it by mistake. I wanted to yell, shake her, force her to admit what Father does to her, to us. But I stayed quiet. I'm turning into her, hiding the truth, acting normal when our home is a jail and our God grows more dangerous daily. Then, October 14th, 1902, the day before the portrait, an entry Marcus read 3 times in disbelief. It's finished. God help us. But it's finished. I cannot write what happened tonight. I cannot put the awful thing we did on paper. But this. Mother and I are free now. We will never speak of it. We carry the secret to our graves and live with its weight every day. Tomorrow we go to the photographer as planned. We pose for the portrait Father booked weeks ago, the one to show everyone what a fine family we were. We will smile if possible. We will hold hands. We will remember we are survivors, not victims. Whatever comes after this life, we picked life over slow dying. Marcus showed Caroline's words to Jennifer Martinez and Rachel Foster. They met late one night in his studio, the photo large on his monitor beside the scanned journal page. "This is a confession," Rachel said softly. "Not open, but plain enough. They killed him. In self-defense," Jennifer said strongly. "After years of abuse, after the law gave them nothing, they saved themselves the only way left." They sat for the photo less than a day after Thomas vanished. His blood was on their hands. They tried to clean it but missed some. And they knew. See how hard they grip, hiding the marks. "Why go at all?" Rachel asked. "Why not cancel?" "Because canceling would look strange," Jennifer said. "Thomas booked it weeks before. If they canceled right after he disappeared, people would question why. They would seem not worried enough. They had to go, had to act normal, even with blood still there." Marcus studied their faces again. Knowing the truth, their look is not stiff old style. It's resolve. 2 people who did something huge and final and decided to live with it. "The photographer likely missed the stains," Rachel noted. Photos then needed long still poses and exact light. He focused on keeping them motionless, on exposure and focus. Tiny marks on hands, half hidden by their grip, were easy to overlook in low studio light. Jennifer opened the old newspaper stories. Police searched weeks, found nothing. No body. Helena and Caroline never suspected. Why would they be? Proper middle-class women dependent on Thomas. No obvious reason. And they played the worried wife and daughter perfectly. "Where is his body?" Marcus asked. They sat quiet a moment. Jennifer finally said, 1902, New Orleans had swamps, bayous, the Mississippi. Endless spots to hide a body forever. The river's current and depth could take it to the Gulf and gone. They had help, Rachel said. 2 women couldn't move a grown man far enough or well enough alone. Someone assisted, a relative, a friend who knew the abuse and helped, or someone paid who stayed silent. Marcus kept looking into the women's lives after 1902, wanting to know how they carried what they did. Records showed they not only lived on but quietly succeeded. Helena ran her boarding house well from 1909 to her death in 1928, at 63. Old boarders described her as fair, gentle, and very protective of young women guests. One 1915 diary note said, "Mrs. Blanchard warned me about my suitor, spotting violence under his nice ways. I thought she worried too much, but when he got mad over my refusal, I saw she was right. She spots dangerous men like no one else." Of course, Marcus thought. She lived with one. Caroline began teaching at a girls' school in 1905 at 19 and gave her life to it. Records showed. She especially taught about women's legal rights and financial freedom. Bold topics then. Former students left memories in school files. One from 1940 said, "Miss Blanchard told us marriage should never be a woman's only path. We needed our own money, skills, support. A woman fully dependent on a man was in danger. We saw her as modern. Now I wonder what taught her that." Her later journals at Newcomb never named the 1902 event directly, but hinted at the heavy load. In 1920, age 34, today I voted for the first time. I thought of mother gone before she could vote, a right we once thought impossible. I thought of all women who fought for it, and our own private fight no one knows, the one that freed us from another tyranny. I voted for those who protect women from domestic violence. If one vote saves one woman from our old hell, maybe what we did had some purpose. In 1935, on Helena's would-be 70th birthday, I miss Mother daily. More today. She felt such guilt over what we did, though I told her many times we had no choice. She feared for my soul, for damnation. I said if God is fair, he sees we were survivors, not killers. If not fair, I want no part of his heaven. We did what we must to live. I regret only the need, not the act. Marcus wrestled with how to share this. He had proof of homicide. Legally, Helena and Caroline committed murder, whatever drove them. But morally, emotionally, historically, it was much deeper. He set up a private meeting with experts. Historian Jennifer Martinez, forensic analyst Rachel Foster, legal historian Professor David Chen from Loyola University, and trauma psychologist Dr. Sarah Williams. They met at Tulane, the portrait large on screen. Professor Chen spoke first legally. In 1902 Louisiana law, this was murder. Self-defense needed an immediate danger. You could protect yourself in an active attack, not by planning ahead. If they killed during a beating, maybe a defense. But if planned, waited, struck when safe, it was murder. But the system failed them totally, Jennifer said. No divorce, no police help, no legal exit. What choice did they have? I don't defend the law, Chen said. I describe it. 1902, law was deeply unfair to women. Legally, though, it was a crime. Dr. Williams spoke. Psychologically, this was self-preservation. Long-term abuse victims often know their abuser will kill them someday. They are usually right. Violence grows. With no law help, no way out, no aid, fighting back becomes logical survival, not crime. They carried it 50 years, Marcus said. Caroline died 1954. 50 years with that secret. Huge burden. Yes, Williams said. But the other path, doing nothing, meant more years of beatings until death. They chose life. Survival demanded action. Rachel added, it's not about legal right or wrong. It's whether their story should be told with compassion, seeing their trapped position. The photo shows two women who saved their lives. They took one to do it, but they lived in a kind of death already. They talked another hour about ethics, history, and framing the violence inside years of abuse. 3 months after Marcus began the restoration, the New Orleans Museum of Art opened an exhibit called Concealed Women's Hidden Histories in Turn-of-the-Century New Orleans. The main display was the Blanchard portrait, shown with forensic close-ups of blood on hands, journal excerpts, 1902 women's legal facts, and domestic violence context. The text read carefully. This October 15, 1902, portrait captures two women at a life-changing moment. Helena and Caroline Blanchard suffered years of documented abuse from husband and father Thomas Blanchard, missing since October 14, 1902, and never found. Evidence points to their possible role in his disappearance. NSA. We do not excuse violence, but we must see this in its time. In 1902, women had no legal escape from abuse, no divorce without husband's agreement, no police or court help. This image asks us to think about justice when law is unfair, and survival when no paths remain. Opening night drew crowds. Marcus stood by the photo, watching people read and look. Reactions varied. Shock, sympathy, deep feeling. Many lingered, staring at clasped hands, trying to match the hidden violence with the calm faces from 122 years ago. An older woman came to Marcus, tears falling. My grandmother was beaten 40 years by her husband, died 1955, carrying scars inside and out till the end. No escape, no help, no hope. I see no killers here. I see women who refused slow death. I see women who chose life. A younger woman nearby said, I work in a domestic violence shelter. We see women trapped like Helena and Caroline daily. No money, no support, nowhere safe. Law is better now than 1902, but still fails many. This photo shows progress, and what still needs fixing. Marcus saw teenagers study the blood image. One said, "They killed him, then got their picture taken so cold." Her friend answered, "He killed them slowly for years. They just ended it quicker." I don't judge them. The words showed the story's depth. No easy right or wrong. Legally murder, morally understandable. Criminally wrong, humanly reasonable. Late that night, a woman approached. "I'm Dr. Patricia Roussel. My great-grandmother was Helena's friend. I found their letters after my mother passed. Helena never admitted directly, but in 1910 she wrote, 'You asked how Caroline and I lived through Thomas's death and the gossip. Truth is, we became survivors before he vanished. We made a choice that took our innocence but saved our lives. I don't regret it, though I deeply regret it was needed.'" Dr. Roussel looked at the photo. "My great-grandmother kept her secret, never spoke her suspicions. I found the letters last year. When I heard of your find, I knew to share. Helena and Caroline deserve people who understood without judging. Good women forced to do a terrible thing with no other way." As the gallery emptied and lights dimmed, Marcus stood alone before the portrait. Helena and Caroline gazed back, hands locked, blood hidden between fingers. They carried the secret the rest of their days. Helena 2006 more years, to 1928. Caroline 52 more to 1954. They survived, built lives, helped others. Helena guarding her borders, Caroline teaching girls strength. They saw women win votes, property rights, some abuse protection, changes they believed in. The photograph held their confession and defense, shame and strength, crime and rescue, left behind with blood as proof of deed and reason. Now, over a century later, their story could be shared, not simple murder, but a strong reminder of awful choices forced by unfair systems on those with no escape. Marcus switched off the lights and left. In the dark behind him, Helena and Caroline held hands across time. Their secret out, survival clear, humanity seen, because of, or despite, the blood they spilled and the life they took to save their own.